All set
Yeah,
then?
we can go.
Well, good morning, and I'm very pleased to be here this morning with Deputy Mayor Michael Thompson, and he and the members of the city staff team have been immensely helpful in bringing us to where we are, and I think we're joined on the line, as Lavin will tell you, by Barbara Gray and by Carlton as well, who can deal with the matters of the sort of permitting and enforcement and the entire program that I'm going to talk about this morning, because it really has been a huge effort on the part of our city staff to get us to where we are today, with great cooperation, I should say, as well from the Ontario government. One of the keys to our economic restart and recovery in this city will be to make sure that we do everything we can to help restaurants and bars to thrive. These businesses, as we all know, mean a lot of jobs. They mean lively neighborhoods, vibrant streets, and great experiences for both residents and for visitors. They are a key element in our city's economy, and they've been hit very hard by the pandemic. They represent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, in fact thousands of jobs, and they've been hit very hard by the pandemic. Now, while I know that many restaurants and bars have been working to provide a takeout and delivery service where they can right now, I know that they're eagerly awaiting the day when they'll be able to reopen to a much broader service offering ultimately including dine-in service. And I know that Toronto residents miss having a meal or having a drink at their favorite spots, especially as summer approaches, and especially, of course, on our beloved patios in such a short patio season that we do have. We are well into that patio season now, but the pandemic has changed all of that. Restaurants and bars and for the most part patios remain closed to most services on account of the province-wide emergency order, an order that came after our own strong recommendation that these locations close their dining areas and the bars to help stop the spread of COVID-19. So we're working with the province and public health to figure out both a timeline and appropriate conditions under which these businesses can reopen their dining areas safely, and we've made tremendous progress on a plan to open up more patio space for restaurants and bars, and it's that we are both here to talk to you about today. I'm happy to announce today that the city has developed a new program called CafeTO to help the restaurant and bar industries restart from COVID-19. CafeTO is a quick start program that will make it easier for restaurant and bar owners to open patios, to expand patios, and to access additional space for physical distancing, and for that matter, revenue generation during the summer months, which fortunately still lie ahead. The program will provide more outdoor dining areas and areas for patio and consumption of beverages by identifying space in the public right-of-way and expediting the current application and permitting process for sidewalk cafes and parklets. I know there's a tremendous interest in this program from restaurant owners and bar owners and from the BIAs. We've actually had dozens and dozens of inquiries about this since we indicated that we were putting a program together. Since I first raised the idea, we've heard from a lot of individual establishments and a dozen BIAs expressing interest in doing this, so that means by definition it will be something not confined to downtown but will happen in different areas of the city where the BIAs think it can be made to work. So the city has established an action team to oversee the program with input from many divisions, because these things are not uncomplicated in terms of making sure that they are done properly and done in a respectful way to the neighborhoods and to the businesses and many other things. And so that includes, without limiting the list, transportation, municipal licensing and standards, economic development, planning, and strategic communications. We've had to be engaged in active discussions with the province on some of the regulatory aspects related to liquor laws on the patio plan, and those are largely resolved. I had a good conversation with the Attorney General of Ontario, Doug Downey, who is responsible for the AGCO, the regulatory body that looks after rules pertaining to alcohol in the province. And that phone call and the efforts they've been making have been with respect to a mutual desire we have to cut red tape and to make sure that these expanded patio spaces can be done on a very simple, straightforward basis. And I can tell you from that conversation with him that the province is keen to support this initiative and will be taking steps accordingly. And so I want to express particular thanks to the Government of Ontario and to Attorney General Downey for their cooperation in making happen the program that we're going to be proceeding with. At my urging as well, city staff are getting ready now so that the city can act quickly with lightning speed to help restaurants and bars to take advantage of this program as soon as the provincial order is lifted that allows those places to reopen on some basis or other. It isn't clear at this moment exactly when that will happen. I'm hearing reports that it will be part of the stage 2 reopening, but we have no confirmation of that. But we want to make sure the city and that the individual bar and restaurant owners are ready to proceed, most particularly that we are ready to proceed with these expanded patio offerings just as soon as we're able to do so. So significant work has taken place in areas such as the establishment of the cross-division action team to oversee the program and make sure that it can operate quickly and efficiently. There's been a review conducted of the current requirements, and we've determined how we can cut tape around those requirements, including the waiving of patio fees for the expanded space. Otherwise, there would be additional fees levied on the expanded space, and we feel that if we can waive those fees, this will be an additional help to those who could open these expanded patios, in that they will get extra revenue generation but won't have to pay extra fees to us, and thus that this will help those struggling businesses. We've undertaken planning for the reallocation of sub-curb lanes of streets in appropriate areas for patios so as to maximize the space available and provide more help for this industry. And finally, we've been consulting with the BIAs and with other key stakeholders, including TABIA, the citywide association of BIAs, and with the restaurant industry associations to coordinate this important economic rescue initiative. This will be key to ensuring that restaurants in appropriate locations across the city can take advantage of this and can sign up quickly and move forward to have this extra patio space open as soon as possible. We've also created essential cafe placement guidelines that will ensure that these patios can be operational as soon as they are in fact permitted. So I'm really proud of the work that has been done by the city staff in particular, and under the leadership of Deputy Mayor Thompson and the department for which he's responsible. They've done it with what I described during this pandemic as wartime speed, because we knew that this is an industry that's been terribly hard hit, and we also knew that it's an industry that's very important to people and to their enjoyment of summer and to their enjoyment of their own neighborhoods, because we're certainly imploring people in the days as the pandemic hopefully recedes to dine and to drink and to shop local to get those small businesses back on their feet. The staff has responded to my commitment to help give this industry the best conditions that we possibly can to get back in business, and just as importantly, to stay in business. A lot of them have struggled to get to the point where they can get back in business, but they're still on shaky financial ground because of the long period in which they've been required to be closed, notwithstanding the very helpful programs from the federal government in particular. But they still have a big mountain to climb to get back into the kind of shape they were in before the pandemic started. COVID-19 is a deadly virus from a public health standpoint, but it has also threatened the livelihood of many of our residents and many of our small businesses, none perhaps more so than the restaurant and bar industry. And that in turn has threatened the well-being of our neighborhoods. When you see already, and we want to stop this from spreading, the number of vacant property signs that exist on the commercial side. So we're doing everything we can to help these residents and businesses get through this terrible time and get to better days that certainly lie ahead. If you look at the looming threat of COVID-19, which continues to be something that is bedeviling us today, and we look at the prospect of second waves and so on, which we're certainly trying to minimize, we want to make sure that we do everything we can to give restaurants and bars things like more patio space to allow them to thrive, and we're looking to manage that interest and to make sure that we can see as many of those patios established in places across the city as possible. So the good news is, if you have a patio already, there is nothing to stop you within the context of these rules and regulations for the expansion to get ready to open now. The city is creating a registration process to sign up for the additional patio space that people may wish to take advantage of, and to streamline that process so it can be done very quickly. The details on this registration process and when businesses can start signing up will be communicated in the very next few days as we refine the final details with the province of Ontario and work to coordinate on their, of course, necessary lifting of the order to allow patios and restaurants to open generally. A key feature of CafeTO will be to allow businesses to establish options for cafe configurations on portions of the streets, of the sidewalks, and other public spaces, and for that matter, adjacent private property in appropriate instances, in accordance with public health guidelines and with physical distancing, which will be, of course, in place, we expect, on the go forward. I will be working with Councillor Deputy Mayor Thompson and the other members of Council to waive permit and application fees. This will require Council approval, but we do have a Council meeting coming up later this month. I believe that that kind of waiver of these additional fees would be a cost-effective way in which we can further help business that are these businesses and to encourage this patio expansion to actually take place for the benefit of both business and residents. We will also provide local restaurant and bar owners with a set of guidelines for the installation of temporary sidewalk cafe parklets or parklet cafes. We're encouraging restaurants as well to take advantage of the cafe space they presently have available to them right outside in the front of their businesses, because many can do so now and just haven't as of yet in some cases taken full advantage of that. No permit is needed to set up cafe seating directly outside of a business. Again, the timing for opening of cafes and patios is to be determined based on the lifting of provincial health orders and the corresponding local health indicators that we talk about each day in this city. And we hope that those are going to continue to improve with your cooperation in terms of physical distancing and other things that we've been encouraging from the very beginning. But I just wanted people mainly to know, the Deputy Mayor and I did, that this work is underway so that we can ensure that restaurants are ready, that bars are ready, that existing patio holders and those who wish to expand or create new patios are ready to move the minute that the order is lifted by the province. Information on this program will be posted at toronto.ca/cafe in the coming days. This is an approach that has been adopted or is in the process of being adopted, as is the case here, by cities around the world. And it relates to a whole series of things, an overwhelming desire we have to help these businesses get back on their feet, an overwhelming desire we have to ensure proper physical distancing and so that people can enjoy the outdoors without seeing any anxiety about their health, and a desire to create more space where people can just be out and enjoying themselves after a period of time when they've been cooped up in apartments and houses for a long time. I have been very determined from the beginning, with the great help of the Deputy Mayor, that we should do this in a quick and efficient manner. And I know that businesses will want to reopen, that people will want to get back to their favorite neighborhood restaurants and watering holes, and that we will be very happy from a number of standpoints, economic, social, and otherwise, to see these important businesses back in business and maybe expanded and staying the course, being able to stay in business for the future. This is one further example of another Quick Start program that we want to see bring vibrancy back to our main streets and help our hospitality industry and all of the people who rely on it, thousands in number. So now I would like to invite the head of our city's Economic Development Committee, our Deputy Mayor Michael Thompson, to say a few words about this initiative.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, everyone. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to start off by just applauding your leadership on the CafeTO and other economic support and recovery initiatives as well, along with all the other things that you've done. I think the business community know that they actually have a friend in you, and the initiatives that you have brought forward to respond and to assist them demonstrates this. You pointed out, quite rightfully so, the importance of the restaurant industry to our communities and our main street and so on. And as you've indicated, you're doing everything possible to ensure that we are ready to go once the province has lifted the orders that restrict the gathering and so on. There are 8,000 restaurants in the city of Toronto, including 660 outdoor sidewalk cafes on private property, and on public property, and another 542 on private properties. I know that there will be many more patios and expansion of patios thanks to this initiative by the mayor. And I'm very proud to stand in support as the chair of the city's Economic and Community Development Committee. We know the roles, we know the patios play, we know that patio seasons would normally be in full gear at this particular point in time. Patios play such a crucial role of importance in the economic and social vitality of our main street and the city as a whole in the best of time. And it will help us to recover from the economic gut punch that we've received and other cities have received as a result of COVID-19. CafeTO represents an opportunity to expand our vibrant patio culture across the city and to bring people back to our main street in a safe way and as Toronto begins to reopen. It's really important that we are ready to go once the orders have been lifted. This initiative will help restaurants, as the mayor has indicated. It'll also help community as well. It will help us to bring that sense of normalcy back to our community and into the essence as to the small businesses who are such vitally important to our city. It's really important that we understand who the Toronto businesses are struggling during this pandemic. And to achieve the necessary number of people that actually can go to a patio, it's really important that we follow the advice of the medical officer of health and the guidelines to prevent the continued spread of COVID-19. We, as you've heard from the mayor, have been working coordinatedly with the BIAs and others and consulting with the restaurant industry stakeholder groups and associations. This collaboration will be the key to our successfully bringing forward this initiative to ensure that the patios and our restaurants and so on are back in action to help businesses and to ensure that there is a sense of prosperity, and the direction going forward will be such that businesses will have that passion to continue to expand and to grow. This collaboration is extremely important, and the leadership of the mayor has just been absolutely amazing. The leadership of our staff team, the collaboration with the different divisional working together is extremely important to make sure that we get this right. We're working with the business owners to help them understand that CafeTO placement guidelines and the cleaning requirement that's required, and how to help them to understand and to maintain the physical distancing to ensure that their customers and their employees are safe and operate in a safe environment. In as much as we want to open businesses, we want to ensure that we do that in a safe manner to protect customers and the employees that are working for these respective businesses. So CafeTO is precisely the kind of dynamic and nimble and cross-divisional response that the city needs to employ with our partners in the industry and community to counter this pandemic and to gradually begin the recovery process that we are all desirous of. And so, Mayor, I want to thank you again for your leadership on this file. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Now we'll open up the floor to questions. A reminder that it is one question, one follow-up. We also have Barbara Gray from Transportation Services and Carlton Grant from Municipal Licensing and Standards on the line if you have any questions for them. So first up, we have Ashley from News Talk 1010.
Hi, good morning, Mayor Tory. I'm wondering if you can comment on specific areas of the city where staff have identified as having good expansion potential.
Well, there are a number of areas not confined to the downtown, I'm very pleased to say, and I think there are still perhaps more potential areas to come from the more suburban parts of the city, but I will just say that at present the dozens of expressions of interest we've received through the BIAs and from restaurants and bars directly stretch out across what I'll call the broader downtown and midtown sections of the city. So, you know, it's kind of the old city of Toronto, as it were, with some around the edges of that, but there are some further afield, and I just hope there will be more people that will take a look at this in the suburban areas of the city and decide it's going to be great for those neighborhoods and great for their businesses, recognizing that the situation, the places where those restaurants and bars are situated in the suburban areas are often a little bit different in plazas and so on, but there's nothing to stop private property from being used there for expanded patio purposes either.
Thank you. And in terms of the financial aspect, of course, the restaurant industry has been struggling terribly through the pandemic, but the city's finances are also not in great shape. So was there any discussion about perhaps keeping those permit and application fees in place?
Well, I don't want to presume upon the judgment of City Council on this, but from my standpoint, the answer is no. I felt that it's not a good thing to sort of give something on the one hand to allow people to generate some extra revenues, especially taking into account the fact that these patios, all of them across the city, will have to, in all likelihood, engage in some measure of physical distancing. So you might have only every second table open, to pick an example, compared to what might have been the case, say, last summer. And so I don't think it's good to give something to take account of that and then to take it away on the other hand. And, we have financial problems, but in the end, I think the city overall will be much healthier in the broadest sense if we allow these businesses to get back on their feet and to stay on their feet in terms of all the jobs and all the vibrancy and the lack of for lease signs that we'll see across the city.
Next up, we have Linda from CBC.
Hi, good morning, Mayor. I'm just wondering if you've looked into, or if you could comment on the potential effect on things like traffic flow, pedestrian traffic, foot traffic, parking, things like that, due to the expansion of these patios?
All of that, including traffic flow, pedestrian flow, and so on, will be taken into account. Obviously, we have to make sure that pedestrians can continue to move and that traffic can continue to move as well. But I think people in this time of quieter traffic are willing to see some of these kinds of things done to create more safe, healthy, open space for enjoying the summer on patios and so on, and to see their local businesses, which they treasure. The locals that exist around this city are things that people really do treasure for the very short summer period that we have in the patios. And I think most people will be willing to accept some degree of alteration to the streetscape and to the sidewalks and other public spaces in order to help these businesses get back on their feet, be open in a way that has adequate accommodation given the physical distancing. So I think overall it'll be a plus, and we'll manage it. That's what our officials are so good at.
So just wondering if you've given any thought to the possibility of allowing these expanded spaces to continue once the pandemic is over?
One of the things I think we're going to want to do is to take a look at active TO, for example, where we've closed streets on some weekends. And I'd like to see that program even expanded. We're expanding it a bit this weekend. I'd like to see more expansion to other areas of the city so that we can see lots of members of the public being able to take advantage on their bikes and strollers and feet and rollerblades and whatnot of that opportunity to be outside. And I'd like to look at extending that and not just having this in the immediate post-pandemic period. And the same is true of the patio thing. I think we'll learn from these things. I think doing them is the right thing to do now, and I think it's for a bunch of reasons, including the well-being of these businesses. But certainly for my part, I'll be quite willing to take a look at whether we can make some of this more of a feature of our city going forward. I think that's the trend that is happening in many cities, but you want to see how it works out first.
Okay, and lastly, we have David Ryder from the Toronto Star.
Hi there. First question, Mayor, is given that the public health science seems to say that people have a lot less chance of infection outside, I'm wondering if you think there's any chance that patios might be allowed to reopen first or in some limited fashion before people could actually go inside. Is that being talked about at all?
I will just say that while it's not our decision to make in the context of the ultimate lifting of the provincial order, this has certainly been a topic of discussion because the virus transmits itself less readily in an outdoor environment than indoors. And so one of the reasons that we wanted to proceed with the patio expansions was not just so that these businesses would have more revenue generation space and not just because the margins are slightly higher, frankly, on beverages, but that if that was the case, where patios came first and you had a period of time, maybe it's weeks, maybe longer, where patios only were open with food service and so on, that you'd want to make sure that you were able to take full advantage of that. Because these businesses, many of them are just on the edge, and you want to make sure that you can do everything you can to have them survive and to have them thrive going forward. And that's two different challenges that they face. So I've heard that being discussed. We don't know as yet what the province is going to do, but I guess we'll know it in fairly short order, and we want to be ready for it. And that's the idea here.
Thank you. And we're hearing more and more about businesses, including restaurants and bars, that their landlords not taking advantage of the federal program and being forced to close. And maybe some of them would have had patios, but they won't have the chance. Can you talk at all about what you're seeing and whether the province should actually outlaw?
I have seen examples, too many, in fact, after all this time, because it's been a couple of months now, of people that I think are just inflicting wounds on themselves, landlords doing that when the consequence of them refusing to have any kind of reasonable discussion with their commercial, often restaurant and bar and shop tenants about an abatement or some other allowance on the rent is going to cause that space to become vacant. I don't possibly understand for business reasons why any landlord would take that position. So I will just say this. I've been calling for some time for a ban on commercial evictions. I think it takes those who haven't engaged in any sensible behavior, common sense behavior on this, and just says to them, you're just not going to be pushing these people out for non-payment of rent during a pandemic. And I saw Premier Ford saying he's ready to play hardball on this. Well, I'm on his team. If he's got some team sweaters to be issued, I'll wear one. Happily support him to the hilt. I think the time for the hardball has come. We've had 2 months, when people had to pay these rents and had to struggle to try to do it. Some couldn't. And I think it's time now to say to the landlord community, as much as they have their own issues, there is a program to help you. We've asked you to help the tenants. Some of you have chosen not to cooperate, and it's time to just say there will be no evictions. I think it'll ultimately be for the benefit of the landlords. I can't imagine why they want to be one more place that has a store for lease, a sign on it, at a time when there seems to be too many of those already.
Okay, and we might have one more question from Francine from the Toronto Star. Francine, go ahead.
My question was asked and answered. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, thanks,
May
everyone.
I just say then, just by way of conclusion, I just want to emphasize one more time, Barbara Gray, they have many, many things if you think about it, and her whole team. They have just curb TO, they have active TO, they have the continuing efforts on Vision Zero. I could go on and on. And then Carlton Grant, of course, and his group have been helping us with the physical distancing in the parks and beaches and other places and a whole host of things like that. And I just want to say thank you to them again, because they've had to do all the hard work of putting together all of these different parameters that will apply so that we can move very quickly to say yes to these patio expansions. And the province will be, as I understand it, issuing some kind of a blanket provision that will just allow us to say yes on an individual basis, as opposed to them having to receive individual applications. And those are all people that have been hugely responsible, together with the efforts of all the people in Deputy Thompson's Economic Development Department, for making this a reality. And I want to acknowledge that effort, because it couldn't happen without them. So thank you very much, and this is exciting, and we're looking forward to hoisting a pint at some point in time in the not too distant future on one of those expanded patios. Thanks very much.